UVRDV has a visionary approach through a continuous research, also oriented to the architectural technology. What do you think about the role of the off-site technology in the future?
Yeah, I think it's getting, of course, more and more specific and more real. All kinds of tools are getting much better, and of course we try to benefit from that. I mean, I think it started, yeah, with the digital world. Of course, now with BIM is something which is, yeah, it's there. You cannot avoid it, and it's really good. Although still there's a lot of debate around this. If you hand over, for instance, as an architect's firm, your model to the engineering, not the engineering, the structural, no, just the guys who are going to make it, the constructor. In the end, you end up in a debate, which is really weird, because of course it should always, everybody should really benefit from the fact that the model is there, and you end up in a debate very often, and like up to what level and how you describe things and what layers and whatnot. But of course this is something that we have to overcome again. It has this sort of trial and error, but there's a lot of workflows we try to embed in how we work and how we approach our design. So often designs of ours are seen as something which is not, like the depot is very symmetrical, so it's that's the easy part, but as soon as there's more diversity in either a facade or floor plans, or it gets into, you want to avoid the handcraft. So how to do that in the best of way, and we more and more try to work out these workflows in how to also keep track of what you do. So first of all, it's to, I don't know if you know the project The Valley in Amsterdam. It's these 3 towers along the highway, and they look very as if they're rocks. So they look very irregular, and they have a lot of balconies, and they all look different, and and people always think they're looking at a render, and they're like, okay, yeah, nice project, but it's never going to happen. We said no, but it's, we're at the top almost. So and a lot of, especially developers, are just not believing that it's feasible within their budget, for instance, and how big. But then there, for instance, we through the design tools like Rhino, and then going into Revit, and then having scripting teams, etc. We developed this the facade and its balcony with sort of 3D facade in such a way that it has repetitive elements, so it looks very irregular, but in the end there's a whole set of the same that you sort of switch and you use in different ways. So in that sense it became feasible. And on the other hand, also all the tiles that are there are different, but through these softwares, basically, we managed to, and also through the scripting we did, we managed to label each and every. So in BIM, for instance, you just label, of course, all the tiles, so you know exactly the dimensioning, exactly how they're built up, and if something needs to be replaced, it's very easy. So it's becoming really part of our daily routine, I would say, but there's much more to explore. We have a special team in our office for many things. We have a team for specialties, but also for, we call it Next, and that's the group which is specialized in scripting and trying to combine that with, let's say, this efficiency tool and also sustainability. So it's something we explore all the time. Yeah.
You spoke also about the aspect of the respecting the budget. So for you, the dry construction can be also a tool in order to stay in the safe area, in order to respect the budget.
Yeah, funny enough, of course, no architect really wants to know about the budget, but then in the end, if you if it's there, it's there. So and at some point, and it happens, of course, in every process, you have to actually cut budget or cut costs. Sorry, so you have to see where to do. And I have to say, every time we have to do that in a dramatic way, it actually really improves the project. You would really have to. So first, it hurts, and then you're like, but actually, this makes much more sense, because then I don't know, you get rid of all the fuzz and the things that you added because they're nice or whatever, but then you just have to really go for the pure thing and think again, like what is the message that I actually want to that we want to tell and express. And it's and of course it's also rewarding. I mean, if it works, then and it's still, you know, it sticks to the concept and is as convincing as it was before or even more, then yeah, it's rewarding. So something we have to deal with, of course.
Of course. A huge number of MVRDV projects are icons now. For example, the library in China has the record of the most shared project on social networks. I think the reason behind this result is the capacity to protect the initial concept. About this aspect, how it is important the control of the building site?
Yeah, of course, it's super important. But it's funny. I think the Tianjin Library, of course, it's in China, and social media is super hot, especially there. I think that also helps to boost it. And also next to the many iconic buildings, we also have a lot which are not that iconic, but really looking at a location in a different way, or at a project or a brief. But of course, indeed, there's and either way, whether it's iconic or not, I think it's really important to see that what you have in mind, that it's also indeed, of course, represented still when it's executed. And that's where the design doesn't stop at the first render. You know, the design continues in the engineering part and the choice for materials and the detailing, etc. So it's so in any case, the control on site is super important. So we and of course nowadays as architects you actually get shorter and shorter commissions. Sometimes you only get the design or the concept phase, and then you have to hand it over to a contractor already, which we find quite insane. But yeah, it saves money. So normally we always try to, or we insist on staying there until the delivery of the building, and to really go to the site as often as possible. How do you make sure that it's built what you had in mind? There's of course many ways, as we discussed before. Of course, you go further and further in detail in early stages, which is sort of what happens if you work in a BIM model with these workflows and the scripting, etc. But also to, I think, to keep the dialogue also with the manufacturers, or before that, we very often, of course, work with local architects. You have, that's the communication again. How do you make sure that what you want is going to be executed? And there's many tools, as we just said. So it's indeed to be more there, to even use virtual reality or to have the glasses on to really understand beforehand what's going to happen. But the most prominent thing is to actually be on site and to really, as I showed with Concordia, we of course do with all the projects, to really be very precise in the selection of color or the finishing of material or how it's detailed, etc. So it's in any way, icon or not, I think that's for me at least, that's really important to keep track of, and it's the most fun part also.
And also about this kind of issues is, do you think the off-site technology can help also to control this aspect and mitigate some errors in the construction site?
Yeah, of course. As long as you, let's say, report soon enough what kind of shaping or whatever it is you want to have, then you can also refer back to it. And it's of course it's something that you can use in your screening, your monitoring of the building being realized. And for instance, for the depot, as I said, it's symmetrical, so in that sense it's easy, but still every layer has a different curvature. And again, in BIM, they're all labeled and they know exactly what the buildup of the facade is. They know exactly how they're held up to the facade, what kind of glue is used, what kind of layer of foils, what the coating is. So it's all there. So and also what the shape should be. So in a 3D model, it's there, so they can easily check whether what is built on site is indeed within the margins, just as one example. So yeah, I think it's, and of course it's, especially in these times, if you cannot travel that much, it's also really handy to have these kind of tools that you can actually check in a still, not looking at, you see my picture, it's here, and then you have like, ooh, okay, because that's what we do as well sometimes. Like, it looks okay, but of course you have no clue. To really, almost be there on site, and monitoring, even at a distance. I think that is something which is really good to develop much further.
Okay, fantastic. So it is known then MVRDV as a sort of unconventional sustainability approach. Almost visionary, I have to say, in some cases. I think about the big city, for example. So how would you exactly describe the studio's concept for environmental sustainability?
Well, I would not really have one. I mean, we have one statement for ourselves to be 100% sustainable. But then, of course, becomes the question, what is sustainable and what is 100%? How can you reach that? And is every project fit for that? So there's many levels I think we try to address, and also from the start of a project, and also have a debate with the client on that side. And of course there's certificates and there's levels in that as well. But I would say for some they're still very needed to be able to sell their floors, or to be able to find the right tenant and get the right pricing for it. But basically, I would say they're very outdated almost. So it's good to have them. It's a good starting point, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So what we tend to do, because sustainability for us is also really in, as you probably know, we for years we started off with densification, for instance, which for us also is a way of being sustainable. How to indeed create these, and I showed some examples I think tonight, how to keep these inner city lives comfortable and social and inclusive, and so the social part for us is very important as well, and also the use of land, not to and how to double use your or triple or whatever your plot, and not just to spill the space that we have. So these kind of topics have been, I think, there since the beginning of the office, always trying to make the most compact buildings and to compress, let's say, the amount of program, and still keeping it open for public. So that is, of course, not the putting solar panels on the facade, but it's still super sustainable, we think, as you think of cities and how you can keep the rest of your planet a little bit open. So indeed, also the green for us is a very important thing. So always looking at the context, and then of course all the tools that we have at this moment to make it energy saving or even energy producing. Thinking of using different types of materials, reusing. Yeah, that's all topics that we try to address. So it's not just a one-liner, but it's been there. So it's hard to describe, and the world around changed around us changed. So we change, hopefully just one step ahead. That's what we try. But some of these developments go super fast, so it's and very technical. So it's we try to tackle it from different sides. That's basically what we do.
Awesome. Yes, in most of your project, I saw how the sustainability, the environmental sustainability is actually on one side for the materials, for the design, but also like the one of the main aspects is the social identity that has to be developed through that project. And that I think it's one of the most powerful aspect of your studio, which I admire the most. And VRDV project seems always to be like pushing forward architectural boundaries, as we said, and it's always changing. And here you have the chance to talk to the architects of the future, the new era, the new generation of architects. And so what would your advice to them be?
Yeah, I can start to be very philosophical about it, but actually the main thing is just to have fun. You know, you should know where you want to go, have ambition, and of course have a very open mind. Otherwise you're not getting anywhere. And look around. I think that's what I try to show with the projects, to really understand what the real issue is, and not just to start, from but really try to understand and dig a little deeper, and try to connect things, to try to help your client. Basically, that's because through that you can make a better world in the end for many more people than just the client, in making square meters that they can sell. So that's have fun. That's, I think, the biggest message to young architects. Make it fun and not just a moneymaker. If you want to be a moneymaker, you should find another job, I think.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Good. Yeah, nice
Thank
questions.
you so much.